Federica Mogherini there speaking in Brussels. Let's get the next story here on our agenda here live from Paris. Calls for information on who is on flights in Europe to be shared. This known as PNR or passenger name records. It's currently not something that is on the agenda across the EU for the moment. That is something that's been discussed along the lines of what goes on in the United States, of course. So many anti-terror measures being discussed. Let's bring in our first guest this evening, Ricardo Baretzky, President of the European Centre for Information and Security. Good evening to you, sir. PNR practiced, rather sharing of that practiced in the United States. Why isn't this standard in the EU?
Well, there's a lot of factors in regards to PNR and the sharing of information. I think we have to understand how well it's going to work, and how effective would the PNR policy be implemented if there is a policy. Right? We know from past experience that tracking of people across Europe and airliners in particularly when they enter Europe or passengers is not an easy task. And there's a lot of debate about how such a structure would work, particularly after the recent failure of tracking passengers or issues, for example, the Malaysian airline. So it's not an easy task, and it's very controversial to what the US is doing, because the US has a complete different structure in place when it comes to PNR.
I hear what you're saying. I'm not sure I understand it, to be perfectly frank, and I'm speaking as a layman because I'm not an expert. I'm just like the man in the street. To me, it seems completely illogical that if we can't share details about who is on which flight, we can't fully protect ourselves. So I'll put it to you again. Why isn't this done as a standard practice?
Well, I think it's a very good question, but at the same time, one has to understand that the data, integration of data, one of the things on the topics of today that was discussed in Brussels was the Boost Intelligence Cooperation and the sharing of data. Right? Within the European Union, we have multiple entry points and border points. And one of the big problems is sharing of data across borders. There's, first of all, a major lack of funding to do this. And secondly is to understand implementation of how such data would be managed. So it sounds very simple to implement a structure in Europe, and but the very same structure can fail very horribly if it's not done correctly.
I hear what you're saying. So even if it is shared, it still can go wrong. And we need to leave it there, Ricardo. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Ricardo Baretzky of the European Centre for Information and Security. We're returning, of course, to this subject throughout the evening here live from Paris. Well, let's now